So you've picked up Ravenloft, The Horrors Within. Now what? If you've never really homebrewed before, a broad campaign setting like this can feel frightening, or terrifying, or horrifying even. Don't worry, I got you. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to get started in Ravenloft. And no, you don't need to build an entire campaign world to run it. I'm Chris. This is The Art of Character, a Dungeons & Dragons podcast where we explore all things D&D. Let's roll. All right. Welcome back to the channel. I'm really glad that you're here. So here we go. Back into Ravenloft. Can you get enough? Not me. I love most of the new content that they released with this. It's really good stuff. Some really fun stuff too. So in my previous videos, I take a look at what comes in the Horrors Within bundle. So whether the bundle is worth buying. I talk about the Tarokka deck, give you some ideas on some readings, and then go over the DM screen and give you some ideas on how to homebrew that. Now, you want to know how to put it all together and run something really fun? All right, let's get into it. Unless you're too scared, or maybe you're feeling tortured by it all. Perhaps lost in despair. Maybe you're ready for a jump scare. Boo. All right, so we'll go through the materials that are kind of in the ultimate bundle, I guess, if you will. First of all, there's the book, Ravenloft, The Horrors Within. This is the main campaign setting. We'll go over a little bit in this. We're not going to do the whole book, though, in this video. And then here we go with the DM screen. And so this is going to kind of block my microphone a little bit, but I'm going to show you some of the artwork and some of the stuff on the inside real quick. But what I'll do is I'll post some pictures as I'm talking about this so you can get a little better sense of what's going on. So here's the artwork. And then here is kind of what I have on the inside because I've gone and done some homebrew. And I'll take pictures of all that stuff and show it to you. And here you go. You've kind of got the pictures over here that have kind of got the cover pictures. And then some pictures over here that show you some of the homebrew that I've done. And I've got a whole video, a walkthrough kind of how you can use this. This isn't essential to running a campaign in Ravenloft. This really is just kind of give you some theme, something you can set up and use. I use a DM screen. I kind of set it up right there in front of me. And I have some notes and some other things back behind the DM screen that I don't want my players to see. So if you're a new DM, that's what you use it for. Absolutely not mandatory. And so if you don't like some of the stuff that's in there, you can do what I did. You put some Post-its or some little pieces of paper or something like that and put some notes, some things specific to your campaign that'll be more useful to you. And then here's a map pack. So that comes in the ultimate bundle also. There's also a digital version of this. And here's what I'll say. This is not my favorite. Why? Because the maps are really generic. They're not really related to any of the campaigns or any of the one-shots that are in the book. But they are beautiful maps. They are horror themed and there are some tokens in here. So if you're a new DM, maybe you go ahead and get these, use these to kind of add a little bit to your campaign, but they're very generic. They are beautiful though. So anyway, not my favorite tool, but a great little addition if you don't have any maps and you want something to throw on your table. And then we've got this, the Tarokka deck. There's good and there's bad about the Tarokka deck, and this really isn't a review, but this is an excellent tool. I love having a fortune-telling mechanic as part of kind of my horror or Ravenloft campaigns. Really, I like a fortune-telling mechanic in any of my D&D campaigns. I just love it. And I'm going to show you a couple of things here on D&D Beyond, both in the book and with the tool that they created to help you do some readings. We'll talk about that next. So here we are on D&D Beyond. This is the book, Ravenloft, The Horrors Within, and there's this little section down here on the Tarokka deck. There we go, in the appendix. It goes over the deck. It talks about the high deck, which are essentially the face cards. And then we've got the common deck, which are the suits, coins, glyphs, stars, and swords. And it goes over the basic meanings and kind of the images on the cards right there. And then it talks about how to do a reading. Here's a basic 5-card spread you can do with any D&D campaign, not just a Ravenloft campaign. It's really a fun mechanic. And I encourage you to practice and learn about doing a Tarokka or a fortune-telling reading. It's just so much fun. And so here are the positions, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 1 is the focus of the reading, right here in the middle. And then 2 down here, this is the past, or something that might or might not be apparent to those other than the focus. So this is the focus, something in the past. Position 3, what opposes the focus? So here you are. Here's your focus. Here's the past. Here's what opposes you. 4 is going to be the future, an omen of what's to come. And 5 is what aids a focus. So once again, this is the focus or the question. Generally, in fortune telling, you ask a question. Then this is what's in the past. This is what opposes you. This is what's in the future. And this is what helps or aids you. And here's what I would say about doing a Tarokka reading. So you can easily fit this into a Ravenloft campaign or any campaign. Do it at the beginning or do it several times during the campaign campaign. And it doesn't really matter what comes up during the reading. Just role play it and have fun with it. I'm going to show you the app here in a little bit. It'll help you kind of in doing some readings, I think, or in just learning about them, because it gives you some basic definitions for each of the cards to kind of help you with their meanings. All right, so there's a couple different ways you can do these readings. So one is you can stack the deck. So basically, you decide the story that you need to tell related to your campaign, some things that you need to happen or you want to happen. And you stack the deck, you pull those cards, you do your reading. The other way is to do a completely and totally random or live reading. And then it doesn't really matter, because whatever comes up, you can easily fit that into your campaign. Anything can be an aid related to this theme right here, or anything can be a hindrance or something that opposes you, or anything can be from the past or from the future. You can work just about anything into this, no matter what comes up in your campaign. And what you can do is kind of one of these things, whether they're the past or the future, or opposing them or helping them, whatever it is, people can come forward and say some things that kind of tie back to your reading. Just make it cool or interesting, a little bit spooky about, oh my gosh, how'd they know that? Anyway, just have fun. It is such a great mechanic. All right, let's get into the app, and I'm going to show you a little bit about how you can use that. All right, here we go, the D&D Beyond library. And then here's a reading. It's already themed, so you can choose your deck. You have the basic 5. You can also do the Fortunes of Ravenloft, or you can do these other versions right here. You can do Curse of Strahd or Ravenloft, the Horrors Within. There's kind of 2 different sets of cards that are a little bit different. So we're going to do the Ravenloft one and do the basic 5. Draw your spread. So it'll flip these over and they're animated, and it tells you exactly what they are. They're kind of lit up right here in the middle. So you can click on them or click over here. I like doing this. So here we go. We'll flip them over. So the focus of the question is the beggar, a sudden change in economic status or fortune. So again, you can kind of fit this into anything. They're either going to go up or down in their fortune or in their finances, whatever it may be. Maybe a lot of treasure or something's in their future, or maybe there's a lot of wealth to be had from their path. You can make this up. We can click down here. Here's the past. So something from the past, the innocent, a being of great importance whose life is in danger, helpless, or unaware of the peril. And maybe this is someone they're trying to help from the past, or maybe one of them has a backstory about something tragic that's happened. Pretty easy to connect. Then we'll come up over here, the opposition. So what opposes the focus? Whatever their question is, right? They're going to ask a question about their campaign. So what do we do about this? What do we do with this villain? Which direction should we go? Whatever it may be. So the artifact, the opposition. The importance of some physical object that must be obtained, protected, or destroyed at all costs. So whatever this artifact is, something that opposes them, something that they must find or keep out of the bad guy's hands or destroy or something like that. Again, pretty easy to work into almost any campaign. Then the future up here, the enchanter, inner turmoil that comes from confusion, fear, or failure, or false information. So in the future, there's going to be an enchanter, probably someone who deceives them or lies to them, brings up this turmoil or this confusion. And this can be pretty easy to do, kind of any of your villains or any of the minions of the boss or the villains, or any part of your story on the forces who oppose them. Something that causes turmoil or confusion or failure or false information. And then what is the aid? What's going to help you on your question? So the missionary, those who spread wisdom to others, warnings of the spread of fear or ignorance. So this will probably be a priest or a cleric or something like that, some sort of religious or holy figure, or maybe even a deity or an agent of a deity or something like that that will aid them in the future. And again, even if you don't have all this stuff set up and ready to go, you can add this in. So you can write some story related to the cards that you draw, or you can just kind of add this into the stuff that you already know that you're going to do, kind of fit this in where appropriate anyway. And I love it. But again, it's not essential. You don't have to do it. I just encourage you to do it to add just some great role-playing moments and kind of some storytelling mechanics that can help you tell the story that you want to tell. You can be flexible or you can stack the deck. It really doesn't matter. But there we go, the Ravenloft Tarokka deck. Check it out. I think it's a great part of any Ravenloft campaign. All right, so those are some of the tools, but how do you actually build a homebrewed campaign in Ravenloft? I've got some really kind of simple ideas to help kind of break it down for you. So all right, here's what I do first. If you're not really familiar with Ravenloft, or you just kind of want to learn how things work, so go to here, the introduction, Domains of Dread. And here's some of the basics of Ravenloft. So Ravenloft is malleable. You as a DM can make it kind of what you want it. There is no kind of right way to do it. The dark powers reign, and the domains imprison the Dark Lords. And the mists are all around. You can use it as a narrative device. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of isolation. There's a lot of horror. There's a lot of scary stuff going on. Those are kind of the basics. But there's a few more things you should know. So what else can we say? The dark powers kind of underlie it all, and they are kind of what brought about these domains of dread and Ravenloft. So it's kind of a narrative and a practical thing, but it's kind of this thing that underlies everything that's going on. And here are the mists, and they're all around Ravenloft, and you can use them kind of as a narrative device to kind of start things or end things, to move characters around to different parts of a domain or between domains. They can also be borders and keep characters from going through or across or out of a domain, kind of the thing that traps them there. So the domains are finite, they're isolated, and they hold the Dark Lords. We already talked about that a little bit, but what does this mean? So each domain is ruled by a Dark Lord, one Dark Lord per domain, or sometimes there are two Dark Lords in some of the domains. But each domain is unique. It kind of has its own culture, its own theme, and its own kind of horror. And some of the Dark Lords know about other Dark Lords, and some of them don't. Some of them are allies, some of them are enemies, but each domain kind of holds one Dark Lord, sometimes two Dark Lords. Again, depends on the domain. And these Dark Lords are kind of held prisoner to these domains. The Dark Lords also rule over these domains. They kind of allow who comes in, who goes out, and they're really kind of in control of what's going on, or at least they try to be in control of what's going on. And most of what your characters are going to do are going to be kind of dealing with these Dark Lords or dealing with the agents or the plans of these Dark Lords. And you can kind of twist that up or create that story however you want. But anyway, the Dark Lords and these domains are critically important. So in this book, there are 16 domains of dread and 17 Dark Lords, again, because one of the domains has two Dark Lords. A little bit more on the Dark Lords. They're evil, they're prisoners, they're tormented, they have huge influence on their domains, and they're active. They're always trying to do things within their domains. So the people in the mist, so some of them don't have a soul, and some of them are bright souls, and some of them kind of recycle. So as you die, you kind of just go back into the domain. You never really escape, kind of just the never-ending horror. Some people in some of the domains are kind of aware of what's going on, and other of these souls or these people that are part of these domains of dread, they don't really know that there's an outside world. They don't know that they're trapped in this domain of dread. They just think their life is terrible and terrorizing and horrific. And some of them are aware of this cycle of life and death, and some of them aren't anyway. I mean, I don't know, how scary, how horrifying, right? To just be trapped in all of this horror and all this nastiness and maybe not even know what the heck's going on. Magic operates differently within the domains. You can read a little bit about that as part of your campaigns. What's life like? There's kind of this shared delusion. We talked about that just a little bit. They can have their own languages, their own religions. All of that stuff can be unique to these domains. And then travel, or coming or going from each of these domains. I already mentioned it before, but really a critical piece. And it kind of depends upon how you want to structure your campaign in Ravenloft, whatever domain you're going to pick or domains you want to pick. Basically, do these Dark Lords allow your characters or your party to come in and out? Or is that the whole point of the campaign? So in some campaigns in Ravenloft, the whole point is you're kind of trapped in this domain and you just want to get out or get back home. Or in other domains, maybe there's a mechanism or a way to come in and to come out and to fight against this Dark Lord, to come back and try to save some people or try to do something in that domain, have a way to come in and then some motivation to go back in. Or maybe you have the ability to travel between some different domains of dread. Maybe there's a mechanism, an artifact, or I don't know, some spy network or something like that. I'll talk about some of my ideas for travel later on, but it's up to you as the DM. It can be virtually impossible to escape. Actually, one of the suggestions is to make it totally impossible to escape. Ravenloft is the entire world. It's kind of the Gothic Earth concept, or it can be relatively easy. It's up to you. It's up to your story. What story do you want to tell? But anyway, coming and going, generally up to the Dark Lords, also known as up to you, the DM. Then they've got these adventures by level. They go from levels 2 through 16, and these are one-shots. There's kind of one for each of the domains of dread. You can use these in a number of different ways. You can make a whole world and do a whole kind of your own campaign in one domain of dread and not deal with any of these one-shots. Or you can use these one-shots as just kind of something fun to do. You can kind of connect some of the one-shots between some of the domains. A lot of different ways that you can use them. They can kind of be something you do from another campaign, kind of do one or two of these one shots and then go back. So in that case, you'd want to make it pretty easy for your characters to travel to this domain. Maybe they're pulled in some kind of a way, and then some way for them to escape and get back to their other campaign. But anyway, kind of up to you, however you want to use these. And there's another chapter here about Ravenloft adventures, and it gives you a whole bunch of ideas about what you can do with your Ravenloft campaigns. And I'm going to talk about this for just a minute, because here's some of the main things that you're going to probably do in most Ravenloft campaigns. It's probably something about discovering a mystery. mystery, something that's mysterious, it's part of this domain, something you're trying to figure out. That is just kind of the core of horror and kind of the core of a lot of the things that go on in Ravenloft. Usually some mystery or some kind of series of mysteries that they have to figure out and kind of figure out what's going on, or help the people that are a part of that domain of dread figure out what's going on. And so it's also about surviving. It's kind of this survival horror thing. You're surviving the monsters, the inhabitants, and maybe surviving long enough to escape or something like that. And then there's this whole thing about opposing the Dark Lord. So you may not directly fight the Dark Lord, or maybe you will. It doesn't really matter. But you're going to be opposing the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord's going to be working against your characters as soon as he kind of figures out that the characters are there and they're trying to foil any of his plans whatsoever. Usually a pretty big part of most Ravenloft campaigns. And then escaping. Again, I've talked about it already a couple of times, but one of the big things is, are your characters, is your party going to escape this domain of dread? So what are some approaches to building or homebrewing a campaign in Ravenloft? All right, I'm going to do the first thing, kind of the obvious thing up front. So if you're super nervous about homebrew and want to run something, a complete campaign that's one of the favorites in all of D&D, kind of overall time, that goes way back with its roots to early D&D. It's a complete campaign, can take anywhere from 6 months to well over a year. You can get into it as much as you want to, and is completely and totally fleshed out, known as one of the best adventures written in all of D&D's history, and that is The Curse of Strahd. So if you want to do Ravenloft, basically this flavor of horror and all this, and you're really scared or nervous about doing a complete homebrew campaign, then you can just go ahead and run Curse of Strahd. I mean, his castle is Castle Ravenloft. Now, his domain is Barovia, but anyway, you get the idea. So that's not what you came here for. You're saying, hey, Chris, I know we're going to talk about homebrewing campaign in Ravenloft. Aren't we going to do that? Yeah, we're going to do that next. But just wanted to say it up front. If you want something complete and total and awesome and wonderful that's already pre-written, check out Curse of Strahd. You can even run that first if you want to, or run a part of it and then come back to do some homebrew stuff. Anyway, totally up to you. All right, so first what I think you should do is pick the type of campaign that you want to run before you pick your domain or your domains of dread that you want to use. And I'll explain that a little bit later on. But one of the main things you can do is do an entire homebrewed campaign in just one of the domains of dread. And here's kind of some of the things to think about when you're trying to figure out about what you want to do. So anyway, you pick the domain where you can tell your best story. So what kind of aligns with the type of story that you want to tell? But then I want to show you this. This is Sithicus. I want to show you one of the domains of dread first and show you kind of how it's laid out. It's important because it gives you campaign guidance on leveling. One of the important things to figure out when you're homebrewing is kind of how high or how low a level you want these characters to be and what you're trying to build. And so there is different leveling guides, kind of what you would do with low level, mid level, and high level, what it might look like, some things you can do. And the leveling is related to the Dark Lord. Some of the Dark Lords are a lot more powerful than others. So a more powerful Dark Lord is going to be a higher level campaign. A less powerful Dark Lord is going to be a lower level campaign. So that's just one thing to consider if you're going to use one of these. So anyway, here's Sithicus, talks about the domain, etc., etc. It's going to give you a map, locations. There's a Dark Lord, a picture of him. And I'll show you what I mean by how powerful he is. He's a challenge rating of 19. That's pretty high. It's not the highest, but it's not low either. It's not one of the lowest in kind of this whole set of Dark Lords. Gives you other things about the domain, things to think about, but this is what I want to show you. Here is the leveling guidance for a campaign. So levels 1 through 4, it gives you some ideas about what might happen. It talks about mid-levels, kind of what you could do in a campaign arc. And then over here, it kind of caps you out at level 14, which is a pretty high level, especially for a new DM, but it doesn't go all the way up to level 20. This is to kind of that mid-high level if you were going to do a complete campaign arc. And this is a suggestion, a sketch for what you could do. But it does give you some idea about kind of the power level or what would be appropriate. You would need to be up here all the way at level 10 through 14 if you really were going to kind of challenge the Dark Lord Soth. If you're going to challenge him, you'd probably want to be up there somewhere between 10 and 14 if you had any chance of survival. And I'm not going to get into all the ins and outs about how you would homebrew an entire campaign and kind of how you world build and do all that and write your story. These are just some basic suggestions about quickly getting up and getting started, some things to consider before you pick your domain of dread. So here's another thing you can do. Instead of just having your campaign be in one of these domains of dread, you can have it be in several of the domains. Now, you can just make it also, again, an arc for an existing campaign where they come in and touch some of these domains and then go back to the other campaign. Or it can just be something where they bounce around between some of these domains of dread. There's a couple different ways I think you can do this. So you need a campaign hook. And I think one thing is to kind of have a lich or a god or an avatar of a god or something like that. Something really, really powerful that would have some way or some some sort of power that would get them in and out of these domains of dread. There's also these other things I think that you can do. So one thing is you could have this powerful being send them to these different domains of dread, maybe to pick up pieces or an artifact, or to go on different heists or different quests, to do different things, maybe oppose the plans of some of these Dark Lords themselves, but have this power kind of send them through these different domains and have that be part of the story. It's one way to do it. So, and I think it's great if they don't really even know that this lich or this godlike being or something that's really, really powerful is kind of joysticking them or moving them around. Kind of have an agent of this powerful being set them up and get them going. So they don't even know they're doing all this stuff. Kind of some big reveal at the end when they figure out, oh, this is the guy that's been doing all this stuff or getting us to do all this stuff all along. We thought we were hired by this guy. No, it's actually this guy over here. And oh my God, it's much worse. So another thing you can do is kind of going back and forth between these different realms is have it be a series of heists. It's a heist here, a heist there, and a heist there. I like the idea of picking up parts of an artifact or picking up different things that have maybe been stolen, or maybe this being wants to take things from each of these Dark Lords that are important to get some kind of power over them. But I like the idea of going to different domains and kind of doing heists in each one of them. But then how are you going to get them to travel between these domains? I mean, it could be something as simple as this powerful being kind of opens a portal for them and they travel through, and it does that each time they need to travel. Or maybe there's a spy network or something like that that they can connect to. Maybe there's a spy network connected to this being who's ever hired them, and that's kind of moving them back and forth between some of these various dimensions. I really like that idea a lot. And kind of these spies can assist on some of the missions, or maybe even oppose them, or maybe they're double agents. It could be all pretty cool. I love that idea. Or maybe it's this idea that they're brought in by the spy network itself. Maybe there isn't this great powerful being, but there's a spy network, and they're trying to unravel these Dark Lords and unravel these domains of dread, or oppose them, or rebels, or something like that. Think of something like Star Wars, that trilogy, something where you've got this rebel network opposed to these powerful Dark Lords. I mean, you've got Darth Vader. I mean, Soth is kind of Darth Vader. I don't know, kind of reminds me of that anyway. But you get the idea. This spy network brings them in, kind of shuttles them between some of these domains, and brings them on this incredible Voyager journey. I really love that idea also. So another thing you can do, if you don't really want to completely and totally homebrew, let's say you're not going to do it all in one domain, or you're not going to have them jumping back and forth to various different domains, whatever your mechanic may be, but you don't want to write this thing, or you don't feel comfortable doing that. What you can do is chain together some of these one-shots. So the one-shots all have different levels. And I think one of the great things you can do is kind of pull them in from your main campaign, from another campaign, give them a side arc, and kind of make this level appropriate to whatever you're dealing with. So what I would do is go ahead and take a look at the levels on each of the adventures and see which levels make sense. Now, to me, the thing I think that makes the most sense is doing something at a lower level. Why? Because you can go from one shot and then kind of level up when you go to the next one, and level up when you go to the next one if you start at a low enough level. And I think they start at level 2. So you could go from level 2 to level 4, kind of with these one-shot adventures. You might have to add in a couple of extra pieces to help them level up, but I really kind of like that idea from kind of low to mid-level, going through a couple of these one-shots, leveling up a little bit more, doing some missions, some heists, some one-shots, whatever it may be, and then getting back out and going over to your other campaign. But anyway, if you don't want to write your own stuff or write your own heist, use these pre-published one-shots and use a string of those. I will probably do that for some of my campaigns. At least use one of the one-shots, come in, get a flavor of Ravenloft, and then get back out, or maybe go from one to another one and then get back out and go back to our regularly scheduled programming. Anyway, I just love that, and I think it's a great way to kind of get a flavor of Ravenloft without writing all of your own homebrew campaign, and really just taking advantage of some of this great material in this book. Do a Tarokka reading. Have the fortune teller be the one who brings them in. So one of the things that happens, or they suggest in the Curse of Strahd, is quite simply your party is walking on a road, it gets foggy, and then the fog clears a little bit, and then they're in Barovia. They're in the adventure. There's kind of nothing they can do about it. You can always use the mist and transport them in and move them around. Do a one-shot, do another one-shot, the mist show up again, take them to another domain, the mist show up again, and now they're back in kind of their home world, and oh my gosh, what was that? That was wild. Anyway, just have fun with it. And here's another thing you can do. You can just do one of the one-shots. If you want to get a taste for what Ravenloft is like, pick one of the one-shots that you want to run. Now, again, it can be a campaign arc or kind of a brief detour, one-shot detour from your other main campaign, or you can just kind of have some pre-rolled characters, say, hey, you guys want to do a one-shot? It's kind kind of a horror-based thing, you can pre-roll the characters or have them kind of do a throwaway character for each of them. Just do it for one session or maybe 2 sessions. Give them some flavor, give them some idea of what it's like, and see if they want to do more. All right, so then how do you pick your domain of dread? So here we go. Here are the 16 domains. We've got Barovia, that's the main one with Strahd. There's a whole bunch of content. We've got a whole pre-written adventure, Curse of Strahd, and previous D&D edition adventures all about Strahd. So then we've got Borka. It's got 2 of these Dark Lords. That's a 1 of 2. We've got Darkon, Dementlu, Falkovnia, Har Akir, Haslin, Innsmouth. That's got Cthulhu, which is really, I don't know, there's a whole adventure, there's a whole kind of role-playing game called Cthulhu, and Innsmouth and Cthulhu is just part of that world, and it's kind of the reintroduction of Cthulhu back into D&D. It was gone for a long time due to some lawsuits or something like that. Anyway, Kalikari, Kartakas, Lamordia, Mordant, the Shadowlands, Sithicus, we just talked about, Tempest, and Valakan. So each of these is different. They kind of have their own theme. Some have more werewolves, some have more undead. They all kind of have werewolves or vampires or undead. It can all kind of be a part of Ravenloft. Barovia is all about vampires. Some of these Dark Lords are more like liches or undead or things like that. And then some of them really have cultural components. Example, this one right here, this is kind of an Egyptian kind of a themed one. And this one right here is more of an Indian themed one. So anyway, they all kind of have their own flavor, their own flair, their own kind of monsters, their own kind of story, their own unique Dark Lord with all their different kind of leveling and power associated with those. So here's what I would do. I would go ahead and skim over all of these domains of dread and take some notes. I would want to know the theme. I would want to know the suggested leveling, and then I would want to know a little bit about the Dark Lord, kind of what is the backstory? What is this place about? And then figure out the one that best fits into your domain or the kind of campaign that you want to run. Leveling may be really important depending upon what you want to do. So you pick the appropriate levels. Or maybe the theme or the cultural component is more important to the story that you want to tell. Whatever it may be, there really is kind of no wrong way to do it. But first, figure out the type of campaign you want to run and then kind of go through, take your notes, skim over each of these domains of dread, then come up with your short list. Once you have a short list, narrow it down to the 1 or the 2 or the 3, however many you want to use, and go from there. There's a whole bunch of material. There's also a previous book called Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. It kind of is a companion. It goes along with this. It's got some of the same material. It doesn't have all of the same domains of dread, but it's got more text, kind of more description, and it gives you some additional ideas on how you can run a campaign. A lot of people really love that book. So you consider getting that book, adding it to this one, and really kind of further flesh out and read about your domain of dread, your Dark Lord, and kind of how all that stuff works together. And one of the really strong things about this Ravenloft book is each of these Dark Lords is fully statted out. They really haven't done that in any of the previous materials. So Van Richten's Guide has a lot more text and kind of descriptions and things about kind of this domain of dread and what you can do within that and kind of what a campaign might look like. This one gives more specific guidance. This current book gives more specific guidance about leveling, exactly what you can do in a campaign arc. It makes it kind of much more straightforward and simplified, and then gives you very specific details on what this Dark Lord is like, fully statted out, ready to combat and fight against your characters and thwart their every wish and every desire. So anyway, I would include all of that when I'm picking which domain of dread that I want to use. All right, so in closing, especially if you're new to homebrewing, don't be afraid. So if you and your players are having fun, you're doing it right. That's enough. There really isn't one correct way to kind of build a homebrewed campaign. So just kind of loosen up a little bit. So the Horrors Within is a campaign setting that is really a sketch of ideas. It's a toolbox. It's something to build on. Let your creativity take over and flow. And remember, just have fun with it. So my approach, I probably won't do a completely homebrewed campaign in one domain. Just not something I'm going to do right now. Maybe in the future. Right now, I'll probably do a one-shot in one of the domains, or maybe a series of connected one-shots through several of the domains. It'll be a side arc in a larger campaign for me. And it fits well within one of my current campaigns where there's a lot of planar travel, they're jumping through portals and things like that. All right, for those of you still watching, what would you do with these domains of dread? Have you homebrewed an adventure, maybe even done an entire campaign in one of them? I'd love to hear your ideas. So let us know down in the comments. We'd like to hear from you. And whatever you decide to create, I hope all of your Ravenloft adventures are horrifically terrifying and absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Art of Character. If you've made it this far, consider liking, commenting, or subscribing, or click below and join our Patreon or our Discord. You can also click below and get something from our merch store. Until next time.